Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. The biggest problem in security that remains unsolved is unprotected attack paths that allow threats to compromise vulnerable targets in the cloud and data center. But traditional microsegmentation is too complex and time-consuming. There's a better approach: Edgewise Zero Trust Auto Segmentation. Edgewise is impossibly simple microsegmentation, delivering results immediately with a security outcome that's provable and management that's zero touch. Driven by machine learning, Edgewise automatically builds policies that protect any application in any cloud without any changes to your network. They provide measurable improvement by quantifying attack path risk reduction and verifying software identity before it communicates to stop application compromises and data breaches. To see how to eliminate your network attack surface, visit securityweekly.com/Edgewise.
Welcome back to Paul Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, sitting in for Paul Asadorian. I am joined by Mr. Lee Neely. Welcome, Lee.
Hey, how's everybody doing? We're spending another day in our secret enclave in California.
Yeehaw. Register for upcoming webcasts with ISC Squared and Security Weekly's Evaluating Security Vendors Without Losing Your Mind by going to securityweekly.com/webcasts. If you have missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can find them in our on-demand library at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Reinhard Hochrieser is Vice President of Product Management at Jumio and responsible for the entire product experience, driving innovative ideas and solutions, and leading a global team of product managers. He previously served as Jumio's Director of Product Management and has been with the company since 2012. Reinhard has more than a decade of experience in enterprise solutions and held multiple product and engineering roles at Kiba Group, a market leader of automation solutions for the banking and postal industries, before joining Jumio. Reinhard, welcome to Paul Security Weekly.
Hi, Matt. It's great to be on the call with you, and greetings from Austria.
Yes, you are in Vienna. I thought you were in Linz, but you definitely are kind of back and forth running the teams over there in Austria. So it's almost evening for you now. So thanks for joining us this evening.
Welcome.
So I'm a big believer in three security technologies. My audience, our audience knows this pretty well, that I'm a big believer that after digital transformation's done and we keep doing all the things we're doing, application, user, and data security are the big important pieces. And you guys are focused in the identity space and do some really interesting stuff. But before we get into kind of what you guys do and what makes you unique, I see the challenges with identity, but where are you seeing the challenges with the existing identity approaches and solutions in the market?
Right. So let me introduce Jumio very briefly, so that we are all actually know what we are talking about. So Jumio is the world's largest AI-powered trusted identity as a service provider. So what it means is we help companies to establish trust remotely based on governmental issued documents. And we think that those credentials like, passports and national IDs, driver licenses are the real source of identity. And we actually look into those and make sure they are authentic. So we are helping our customers to know who they are dealing with. So we actually convert strangers into good customers. And most companies check out who you say you are, but we are the ones who actually check who you really are. And that's a huge difference because we, of course, look into the ID documents, but in addition, we take a selfie and apply a strong NIST and ISO certified liveness check to fight against fraud and account takeover as well. And on top, we provide additional services like proof of address and screening as well. We operate on a global scale, so we support more than 3,500 documents from over 200 countries and territories. And we do have customers across all industries, and because establishing trust is so important in the digital world as everything is moving towards digital. And Matt, I'm pretty sure that we are already on your phone and you used our service quite often. And coming back to your question now about the challenges, so if we think about account takeovers, for example, or one of the huge problems is that all the data breaches which occurred over the last couple of years exposed millions, hundreds of millions of data points. And so it's rather easy for fraudsters to get those data points like usernames and passwords in the dark web and utilize that for coming up with synthetic fraud, or they try to do account takeovers. And more recently, we have seen a dramatic increase in automated fraud, so usage of bots to actually try to do account takeovers, because with the utilization of bots, you can perform up to 100 attacks a second, and which is, of course, a huge risk, because think about buying a couple of million usernames and passwords in the dark web and applying it or using bots to actually try to do account takeovers. And
yeah, so Reinhard, we've known for a while the username password situation it's not working, right?
No.
It's ineffective to help protect our environment, especially when those accounts get taken over and replayed and used over and over. We've added really interesting technology like multi-factor authentication, which is supposed to help, but it's a little cumbersome. We've added biometrics. We've added all kinds of additional layers, but we still have this problem. So how do we start to address the problem of username and password and do something different than we've done for the last 20 plus, 25 plus years?
That's an excellent question, Matt, and there is a solution for that. We all know that, as you said, no business can trust that someone's logging in to an account is the actual account owner. So, and let's step back and think about the user's life cycle, so the consumer's life cycle. And there are actually two moments in time over the course of the lifetime of a consumer. So we have the initial identity proving, and then we have authentication. So onboarding, account opening, and then the ongoing interaction means the customer goes away, they come back. We now need to re-establish that it's actually them logging into a service. And historically, those two moments in time, identity proving and authentication, have been completely disconnected, separated. So separate vendors operating in those two bubbles, they use different methods to get there, and there is a broken connection. And this is actually what you have been outlined, this broken connection between identity proving and the authentication stage. So this means very often the authentication system doesn't know who has been going through the identity proving stage. And we don't know whose biometric it is we are enrolling. We don't know whose fingerprint it is we are registering. And that's definitely something that's creating risks for the businesses, but also very often leads to suboptimal user experience, where they and the end users have to go through steps multiple times to be enrolled or even see completely different user interfaces when they go through the journey. So it's now up to us, to the industry, to actually combine those two methods. And Gartner is talking about that as well, and they actually call it identity corroboration. But before we go into detail, I want to talk a little bit about those methods which have been used in the past in identity proving and authentication. And you named knowledge-based verification, for example, or financial and credit bureau lookups. So this is those two methods, they are the shining stars, over the last 20 years, data-driven methods. And so the user gives us their name, their address, their social security numbers. We go away and check them out in databases. And we may come up with some additional questions like, where have you been born? But that doesn't work anymore. You named it. Thanks to all the data breaches, to all the information which is out on social media. So everything you need to know to pass such a test is already out there. And the only way from our perspective to do identity proving right is to check governmental issued IDs. And this is something which has been rapidly developing over the last couple of years. So it's a well understood problem, and it's a very competitive market already. And meanwhile, the technology is extremely great because we can utilize biometrics as well. So liveness detection, for example, which comes with the face, is really powerful. And so we can now establish that the owner of the document, the person who is pictured on the photo of the ID, is actually live and present at the moment of the transaction. So this is a really powerful fraud filter as well.
So does that mean, so Reinhard, real quick,
yes.
Does that mean when I use your service to transact business, there's kind of two pieces to this? I need my ID and my biometric, and it's the combination of those two that says, okay, you've got the state issued ID, federally issued ID, whatever that is, and then the recognition of the biometric, and it's the combination of those two that say, look, you are who you say you are, so I'm going to let this transaction go through. Is that how that works?
Absolutely. So there is this enrollment, the identity proving part, which captures the governmental issued document. We take a selfie, we apply a liveness check, and at the same time, we do enroll the biometric. So we take a 3D representation of the end users of the consumer's face and store it properly. So we call it a 3D face map. And at a later stage, when it comes to authentication, we do exactly the same again. So there is, we capture a selfie, we create a 3D face map, a 3D representation of the user's face, and we compare it with the baseline. We compare it with the one which was initially enrolled. And that's the huge difference to the methods which have been used for 10 to 20 years before. There is no broken link anymore because we do the enrollment of the biometric during identity proving and use that for authentication as well. So it's frictionless because we use the same great user experience throughout the entire journey, the entire lifetime of an end users. There is no need to use different vendors, to use different providers, and we keep the fraudsters out because of that sophisticated NIST and ISO certified liveness checks as well. And that's actually the key differentiator of our solution.
Lee, before I keep going, I want to make sure I get you in here.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with a lot of what Reinhard is talking about. I'm in the federal government space. I've got my HSPD 12 badge, and and what I'm thinking about as you talk about the process for enrolling and doing the strong identity proofing, which is something we have to do, is I'm thinking of people lining up to come to your counter to prove who they are and get enrolled. I can't imagine that's how you're scaling this. I mean, how do you scale it and get all that done?
We, as I said at the beginning, we are the largest AI-powered trusted identity as a service provider. So we utilize and we use AI and machine learning at a large scale. But on top of that, we do have a human verification experts as well, which support our automated platform in case the artificial intelligence models can't come up with a decision. And we call that the Jumio AI way, and we use the statement augmented intelligence as well. And I can talk about that in detail in a moment. So, usage of AI in identity verification is, of course, possible. A lot of companies in the industry are already applying it, but there are still limits. And here at Jumio, we've spent years of developing proper AI models to push the boundaries that help us to reliably extract information from the document, but also to ensure it's not manipulated and not doctored. And but there are limitations to AI. And for example, the need of big data to train it properly, or the number of different ID types and subtypes. I've been mentioning that we support more than 3,500 different documents. So to train an AI model on that huge set of data is a challenge, as well as image quality or omni-channel, because we support mobile, iOS and Android. We do have webcam support, but we support web services as well. So those are just a few of the limitations when it comes to AI. And there is a need for humans to ensure that the right verification decisions are made. And that's why augmented intelligence comes into the game, because augmented intelligence fuses the technology with human expertise. And so this means whenever we route something to a human verification expert, they tag it accordingly. So they tag the data, and we can then infuse that information into our models to help to develop better machine learning algorithms. And this is one of our key or our USPs to massively scale and improve our offering.
It sounds like you're also, there's one more thing you're getting in there. In the government space, we have two measures of an authenticator. Excuse me. You have the assurance level that the identity is who it's supposed to be, and there's the assurance level of the authentication mechanism, whether it's a reusable password or biometric or MFA or whatever. We've been talking about the former, and one of the interesting things is that at the highest level of assurance in the NIST guides, they talk about in-person validation, but it sounds like you've got a plan that you can achieve equivalent level of assurance without having necessarily everything be in person. Or am I reading too much into what you're saying?
We are not aiming to completely replace the in-person checks, because this is somehow difficult, especially if it comes to check like a thickness of the document, or if you move it or tilt it. But it all depends on the risk appetite of our customers. And it's also not just checking the governmental issued documents, we take additional signals into consideration as well, which is, you named it, the liveness check, or a proof of address, or connecting our service to governmental databases to, for example, check the ID number, or applying behavioral biometrics to get a full picture of the consumer who is performing a verification. So it's way more than just checking the genuinity of a physical governmental issued document.
Yeah. So then, how about the other side? You're now, if I want to use your identity service, what's it look from the application, the consumer, the business partner side? Do I say I want this level of assurance that it's really Matt, and I want this level of authentication? I mean, what's it look like from the other side?
We apply the same level of quality for all our customers. So we do not distinguish, because we think that delivering the best possible quality is the right approach. And for our customers, it also doesn't depend if they use a mobile channel or if they use web or a web service. For example, we deliver the same level of quality throughout all the channels. And we also try to apply the same experience for the consumers throughout all the channels, because that's at least as important as the quality of the service, to provide a frictionless and great user experience to drive the conversion and to keep the abandonment rate as low as possible.
Now, the closest example I have of some of this is, and they may be a customer, you don't have to say it, but Mobile Pass. When you come back into the United States, the State Department has a Mobile Pass app that scans the barcode on your passport, and then you have to take a picture with yourself, right? That's the closest app I have on my phone, Reinhard, that does any of what you're talking about, which is a great service, by the way. If I have global entry, but when I travel with my wife, she doesn't. So we use Mobile Pass to get back in the country. And again, you're scanning the document, right? So you know you got the passport. It's got all the passport information. You take a picture of yourself. They compare that picture with the picture on your passport, and it speeds up getting back through customs and immigration, which is awesome. I don't use it outside of that, though. So I'm not sure some of the other use cases of who else is using this technology to drive day-to-day activities, because I'm a pretty secluded nerd when it comes to aspects of identity and stuff online.
No, it's a great and excellent question. And there are plenty of different use cases for our solution, because we combine the identity proving and authentication. Think about car rental companies. So you're going to sign up online, regardless if it's web or mobile. And whenever you pick up the car, you don't need to queue up at the airport anymore. It's just that you show up at the car, you take a selfie, we authenticate you against your initial verification, and the door of the car automatically opens. Or think about high-risk transactions when it comes to money transfer. Right now, they use two-factor authentication, for example. They're going to send you an SMS token or something else. But based on NIST, they no longer endorse KVA or even a two-factor authentication as secure enough. So you can apply a biometric selfie authentication if it comes to high-risk financial transactions. So there are, I would say, thousands of different use cases where you can leverage our solution and our platform.
What kind of adoption rates are you seeing? Because, like I said, I'm keep my accounts pretty secure, and I don't use I have no mobile banking apps, for example. I just don't trust them. I mean, they might be safe, don't get me wrong, but I don't trust them, right? So I always log in, two-factor, send you the second token. But I haven't seen any of my banks using biometrics yet as an authenticator. So I'm curious, what kind of adoption are you seeing with this technology for some of these use cases? Because I don't currently see it, but I'm also kind of a troll when it comes to some of this stuff. I just kind of hide under the bridge and don't use the latest and greatest.
Yeah.
But are you seeing good adoption? Because I think this is great technology.
It is, and we do see a great adoption, but it depends on the industry, to be honest, and also on the region. And so if it comes to banking, Europe, for example, is adopting way faster. We have quite a lot of challenger banks in Europe. They don't have branches at all. So they are actually forced to offer an AKYC, and they are highly interested in biometric authentication as well. In the US, it takes a little bit longer for banks to adopt that technologies. But on the other hand, we do see a lot of car rental and car sharing companies currently starting to implement that solution. The travel economy is, of course, interested too. So airlines, for example, to get your boarding pass, or even in the gaming industry, this is an excellent opportunity to actually secure the accounts against takeover, for example. So we do see great adoption rates. We released that product beginning of 2019, so around about 6 months ago, and we've done millions of transactions so far, and the KPIs are looking really great. So we are absolutely excited about that offering.
Awesome.
That's great.
So I had a question. When Matt mentioned he was, a little more of a Luddite on some of these technologies. No offense, Matt. I was wondering about how what you're seeing in terms of accepting of the risk of you having folks biometrics. I mean, when we all remember the OPM breach that happened a few years back, one of the stats that doesn't always get remembered is they lost 100,000 fingerprints as well. So I'm wondering, how's that are you seeing any hesitation on providing biometrics or pressure that, are you really protecting it well enough kind of scenarios, or is that really not happening?
So from a consumer perspective, we see a great adoption, because thanks to Apple and all the other manufacturers, they paved the way. So everyone is actually used to use their fingerprint or a face to unlock their phone, for example. But yes, if it comes to customers, they are of course interested in security and to protect their consumers' data. That's why we're offering different possibilities to store the data. So there is, first of all, the option to securely store it in our data centers, or it's also possible that all the biometric data is actually transferred to the customers, so that they can keep it in their environment and store it according to their policies. So we offer both methods, and that's actually covers almost all use cases, or almost all questions from customers.
So in the case where the customer stores it on premise, Reinhard, does that mean then that to verify the identity and the biometrics, you're interfacing back with that data store, since you don't have a copy of it anymore in your data center?
Right. That's correct. It's the other way around. So our customers, they initiate a transaction and hand it over, and we do the comparison with the newly captured 3D face map, and then we immediately delete everything after we did the comparison. So there's nothing stored on our end, because we know we have seen all the data breaches and we don't want to create the honeypot. So we want to give our customers the ability to decide what's best for their use case and for their offering.
That's great, because some of the other identity players kind of require you to move that identity to this central kind of cloud-based store that now becomes a potential attack target, right? And so if you allow your customers to keep that locally and protect it, it doesn't create a target on Jumio's back as a potential way to get access to all that data, which would be a huge data breach, obviously.
Absolutely, and that's why we did it.
Yeah, that's great.
I was going to say the same. It's really nice to have that flexible option so you can figure out what risk profile best fits the customer and work with it. I'm glad the consumers aren't as concerned. I think you're right. The prevalence of fingerprint or face identity on our smartphones has kind of warmed us up to the whole idea appropriately.
Yeah, plus the younger
problem.
but the younger generation also in the consumer space is way more open to some of the stuff than us old curmudgeons, and I am included in that description, by the way. So I was not offended, Lee, by that, because I'm kind of purposefully like that. So I just think a little
Absolutely,
differently.
and it's also important to be transparent what happens with the data. So that's what we tell our customers on a regular basis: is share as much information as possible with your consumers and explain what happens with the data, so that they are actually fine to use that, and okay, the data is stored in the European Union or it's stored in the US and it's deleted after authentication or verification is done. This creates trust as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially in Europe, where you have GDPR requirements. The privacy side of this for you in Europe has to be big, so you have to be more transparent in this case.
Absolutely, and privacy is extremely important for us because we are dealing with identities on a large scale.
Do you expect anything to get a little more wonky with when the California data privacy stuff comes into play, or has GDPR done enough of rotating so you kind of have it all set?
Yes, so we are well prepared for the CCPA, for the Californian regulation, and so there is no need on our end to change the way how our product is working, thanks to GDPR and the European Union. And we are convinced that we will see way more regulation in future in the United States, but also in other regions of the world, for example, in APAC. And we are well prepared.
And just to vector slightly, I totally, that's great answer. I started thinking about the variety of authentication we've been talking about for the last few minutes, and I'm looking at my smartphone and I'm looking at my smart card and I'm thinking, that's just not it. And having these alternatives is really where we need it to go. Yes, you can get a smart card reader for your phone. I know it costs about as much as the phone. But I just love that we're finding strong authentication that can work on multiple device formats. I mean, and I guess out of that, I'm saying, what's on the horizon? We've talked about fingerprints and face and live image. What's next? Or is that unfair?
It's not unfair, but it's really hard to look into the crystal ball and come up with ideas. What's the next big thing in 5 years or 10 years? We're gonna see development in the space of biometrics, also utilization of behavioral biometrics. So take the user's behaviors into consideration, is that the usage of the different devices. We're gonna see way more database checks as well. And of course, there is this huge trend of digital identities, blockchain, and all those technologies.
Right.
Sounds like some exciting time.
Yeah, I think as technology improves, right, we're already seeing aspects of augmented reality and other things changing kind of the way who we think it is, right? There's a lot of interesting evolutions in technology that could also impact biometrics in the future. So how does biometrics stay ahead of some of that technology that's trying to do these fakes, which I think is a really interesting problem for the future for people like Jumio and others to solve.
Absolutely.
Lee, any additional questions while we have Reinhard here?
No, I actually that was great, Reinhard. I'm actually really excited about what you're doing, just because when I look at what I'm dealing with authentication in the government space, and this is awesome what you're offering. So I
thank you.
Known about it a few years ago.
It was great to talk to you.
Reinhard, where should people go if they want to get more information?
At www.jumio.com, and then we do offer several possibilities to reach out to a sales or biz dev team. We do have a bunch of videos on YouTube as well, or simply join our Twitter feed or LinkedIn channel.
Awesome. Reinhard, thank you so much for joining us on Pulse Security Weekly.
Thank you, Matt. It was great to talk to you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next week on Pulse Security Weekly.